The Razer Viper Mini and HyperX Pulsefire Haste are both budget mice which I often recommend. But then out of these two mice, which one should you buy? I'm Techify, and in this video I'm going to have a deep dive into whether you should buy the HyperX Pulsefire Haste or Razer Viper Mini. So guys, let's get into this. If you enjoy this video, then hit subscribe and join the Techify Discord, and let me know if there's any comparisons you'd like to see next. These mice are often pretty close in price. Right now in the UK, the Viper Mini is about £25 and the Haste is about £20 on Amazon. These mice are both fairly small, lightweight, and both from reputable brands, so it can be a pretty tough decision between the two of them. As I always say, shape is the most important thing for a gaming mouse, so I'm going to tackle that first. I'll put some dimensions on screen now, but basically the Haste is a slightly bigger mouse. It's a little bit longer, slightly taller, and a little bit wider. The length I don't feel like makes a huge difference between which one of these mice you can use for different grips, but the width is definitely something to consider. It's not just the dimension of the width easier, I don't know how well you can see, but on the Viper Mini the sides go in a little bit at the bottom, whereas on the HyperX Pulsefire Haste they're a lot straighter. If you're a palm user for both these mice, unless your hands are ridiculously small, you're not going to get a full-on palm like you would a big ergonomic mouse like something like the G502. It would end up being more of a, a relaxed like claw palm hybrid thing, where you've got your palm on there and a bit of a claw shape like that. This is a grip that works pretty well on both, however I find the shape of the hump on the Viper Mini and its position makes that grip actually more comfortable despite its smaller size. That being said, if you have bigger hands, then I think the Haste is going to be better for you as a palm user. If you're a claw user like myself, these are both really good mice. With the way the sides go in on the Viper Mini, I feel like I can get a much tighter, harsher grip and really just have that extra control over the mouse. That being said, the straighter sides on the Pulsefire Haste just feel more relaxed and more comfortable, and actually I feel like that's a little bit better and just allows a bit more flexibility with the way I aim. Personally though, I do think I prefer the Viper Mini shape a little bit for claw. My hands are on the smaller side and I just feel like that extra secure grip really helps me aim better. And then if you're a fingertip user, once again you've got the sides that go in. I feel like this is kind of a personal preference thing, and if you haven't tested mice with these things you're not going to know. It's not too huge of a difference, so I wouldn't stress about it too much. But if you're a fingertip user, I think the Viper Mini in its smaller, thinner shape is probably going to be a bit better for most people unless your hands are quite large. The weights are basically the same and the build quality is really good on both. These mice are very solid. However, the only thing is obviously the Haste has lots of holes in it. Like I said, that doesn't hinder the build quality in any way, but you definitely can feel it, especially if you're using a claw grip. You can really feel them in your hand. And initially for the first few seconds it makes it a little bit less comfortable, but you don't notice it after a while. Unlike other mice, you don't get the holes on the side, which is really nice, and that does make a difference. The Haste also comes with some stick-on side grips, which I personally really like. The clicks on these mice are different and they do feel different, but I don't think it's going to affect your performance in any way. On the Viper Mini you get Razer's optical clicks, which supposedly are a bit faster and whatnot, but you're not going to notice that or perform any differently because of it. And they don't feel quite as nice in my opinion as the TTC Golds on the HyperX Pulsefire Haste. They just feel a bit more snappy and nicer to use in my opinion, and I definitely prefer them over the Viper Mini. But once you've been gaming for 2 or 3 minutes, you're not even going to think about that. They're both plenty good enough and feel quite nice, so I wouldn't consider that at all when buying these mice. The side buttons aren't really a big deal for me. Both are placed fairly nice, you get 2 on each. However, I do think the only thing is for the way I grip the Viper Mini, I can kind of use the side buttons without moving my thumb. However, where the comfortable aiming position is on the Pulsefire Haste, I kind of just have to move my thumb a little bit. The scroll wheels on both are fine. I feel like these steps are a little bit more defined feeling on the Pulsefire Haste. It feels a little bit looser on the Viper Mini. I'm not the biggest scroll wheel user, but for both these mice, if you're looking at buying them, I don't think the scroll wheel is something to worry about. The cable is a very important thing on a wired mouse, and luckily, especially considering these are budget mice, the cables are good on both. I stand by though that the cable on the Pulsefire Haste is the best stock cable I've used. It's super lightweight, it's super flexible, it's angled a bit away from your mouse pad, and it just is really good. Similarly though, the Razer cable is not bad, it's also nice and flexible, and it's one of the better budget cables. I have no issues with it, but the one on the Pulsefire Haste is definitely better. With the feet, they're both good on both mice, and being lightweight, I can't really tell much difference when you're actually using it. The bigger surface area on the Viper Mini does feel quite nice. When you're gaming though, I can't really tell a difference, so I think the feet are good enough for the mice they're on, and I wouldn't worry about that either. Obviously you get your RGB differences, I'm not too concerned about that. The only real performance difference left to talk about is the sensor. In reality, with modern sensors, you're not going to notice any difference in terms of tracking and accuracy, and I must say that is definitely the case with these two. There are a couple little minor pros and cons though. So the Pulsefire Haste has a PAW3335 with up to 16,000 DPI. The Viper Mini has a max DPI of 8,500, which is obviously significantly less, but should be plenty for absolutely everybody. The sensor in the Pulsefire Haste is known for potentially having some DPI deviation issues, and all that really means is if you set it to 800 DPI, it may actually be, let's say, 840 or 850 DPI, which in reality isn't going to make any difference. If you're using two mice all the time, you'd notice that, but if you just set your sensitivities accordingly and get used to it, that's not going to be a problem, so I don't think that matters whatsoever. What does matter a bit to me is the lift off distance, and that's when you're gaming and you have to lift up to readjust how high you have to lift off before the sensor will stop tracking. You want this to be as low as possible so that when you're gaming and you have to readjust, you don't move your cursor back, get any jitter, anything like that. You want, as soon as you take it off the mouse pad a little bit, it to stop detecting any movement. That is about 5 playing cards on the Pulsefire Haste, which is pretty average and is good enough for me. It is about 7 playing cards on the Viper Mini, and I did notice now and again I get that little bit of jitter or tracking that I don't want. It's not particularly bad, it's not a big deal, but it is something to bear in mind, and it did annoy me a little bit. So as a really quick verdict, I think both these mice are really, really good. And if after watching this video you still can't decide which one is going to be best for you, then I'd say either go with whichever's cheapest or whichever you feel like. For the most part, I think the HyperX Pulsefire Haste is a slightly better mouse, and it makes sense because originally it was more expensive. Hopefully you found this video informative and helpful, and if you did, make sure you subscribe to the channel. For your next video, go check out my review of the HyperX Pulsefire Haste Wireless. Sometimes on sale it only costs a bit more than the wired version, yet it can compete with things like the Logitech G Pro X Superlight. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.